Today's video is brought to you by Grey Viking Games. Click the link in the description below to buy mtg Arena codes for cosmetics, packs, and more. Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Jeff, and today we're going to dive into some new Strixhaven spoilers. And man, I am so excited for this set. There is some really fun stuff in this one, and let's go ahead and dive right into it. Make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe to support the channel. All right, starting out with Mavinda Students Advocate. Actually, so I just really finished recording all of this thing, and then these awesome cards just barely came out that I'm reading through kind of for the first time right now. But I'm going to put this to the beginning because they're a bunch of mythic cards that just like barely dropped. So Mavinda Students Advocate, 3 mana bird advertiser 2/3 with flying, and you can activate for 0. You may cast target instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard this turn. If that spell doesn't target a creature that you control, it costs 8 more to cast this way. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead, activate it only once each turn. So I'll be talking about some other cards after this that I wanted to mention that just because there's some other cards that I didn't talk about with this one that are really busted. There is a sweet kind of storm style card that would be really busted with this that does target cards that you have and everything like that. The biggest downside of this is, of course, if you're trying to target like a Heartless Act at something or anything like that, then it costs 8 more to cast this way. But if this works with Orvar, where you're trying to target a bunch of your stuff anyway, then this can be really, really busted. Just you for free get to cast another spell that targets something that you control. Sounds really, really fun. I'm excited to see what we can do with this. This is my first time reading this card. Blot out the sky, X white black sorcery. Create X tapped 2/1 white and black ink and creature tokens with flying. If X is 6 or more, destroy all non-creature non-land permanents. Whoa. All right, that's actually really good. So it destroys all planeswalkers, destroys all enchantments that are out there, all the other things. So non-creature, that's a really weird board wipe. All artifacts, all enchantments that are out in the battlefield, all planeswalkers out in the battlefield that are not lands, not creatures. That's really exciting. That's actually really cool. That hits a lot of stuff. This also is a great way to destroy the 9 lives or whatever. So pretty cool stuff. 8 mana to get that effect. Otherwise, just having a bunch of flying inklings. This is decent. I think that you have to cast this for 5 or 6 for this to be quite worthwhile anyway, because I think just 4 mana creating 2/2s historically hasn't been that great, but the fact that these have flying makes that actually a little bit better. So even then it's decent. Because having the evasiveness actually does add to it, especially there's another card in this set as well that gives +1 to all tokens, and I was really harsh on it before, but now I'm thinking this actually could be pretty decent now. At the same time though, if you get up to 6 or more, you end up destroying itself because I think it's an enchantment. So I don't know, you'll see that one later in the video. Sorry to kind of be doing this. This is also the first time seeing this card, which is a Lucca. It's a Lucca modal card, and obviously it won't be broken because, as we know, Wizards gives us really, really healthy modal planeswalkers. All right, Mila, Crafty Companion, 3 mana Fox 2/3. Whenever an opponent attacks one or more planeswalkers you control, put a loyalty counter on each planeswalker that you control. Wait. So whenever an opponent attacks one or more planeswalkers you control, put a loyalty counter on. Okay. Whenever a permanent you control becomes a target of a spell or an ability opponent controls, you may draw a card. Ooh, that's really good. That's good card draw in white, but it's not, of course, not completely white, so it doesn't actually work. Anyway, 6 mana 5 loyalty, +1. You may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. If a creature card was discarded this way, draw 2 cards instead. Interesting. Then you can -2 return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of your next end step. So next upkeep. So you have to exile at the beginning of the next upkeep, but you get to do that 2 different times before loyalty's out on this, and you can get up to it pretty quickly again. -7 ability. You can emblem with whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So you get what's the dragon? The dragon's effect. Anytime a creature enters the battlefield, the damage equal to its power to any target. Dang, that's awesome. I mean, that's not game ending, but those are really powerful effects. Mila is very, very playable. A very playable card. It definitely wants to go into something where you have planeswalkers, but even just the 3 mana 2/3 that says whenever permanents you control become target of a spell or ability. Spell or ability, that's really great. That itself is really good. That's typically a green type of effect, and so I actually really like that. All right, that's a really powerful card. Humiliate, 2 mana, sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. Put a +1/+1 counter on creature you control. This is really, it kind of feels like a what's it called, the one that surveilled is, I can't think of words right now, and I thought it in my head beforehand, but all of a sudden new cards came out. I got all excited. This is really powerful. Obviously, this is 2 mana to discard any non-land card from a hand for 2 mana is historically been really good. The 2 mana one that does that right now deals 1 damage to you, but it also gets to exile it. This one you get to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature control. Of course, you have to be in white and black to make it work well, but I don't think that that's a downside right now. There's actually quite a few really good Silver Quill type of cards that are out there, and so Humiliate I actually think becomes really good. All right, diving into the rest of the video now. Sorry to interrupt here real quick. Crackle of Power probably is one that won't see as much play, but it is at least really exciting. So Crackle of Power, XXX, and 2 red, sorcery. It deals 5 times X damage to each of up to X targets. So for 5 mana, first off, you can cast this for 0, does nothing. But okay, that's cool. You can 5 times 0, which does nothing. Anyway, 5 times 1 though is 5 damage that goes to 1 target. X equal to 1, 5 damage. So if you get up to 8 mana, then it's 10 damage to up to 2 targets. If you get up to 11 mana, then it's 15 damage to 3 targets, and 14, then you suddenly have the 20 damage to 4 targets, which is all of your opponents, and you can win the game, or something like that. That's or get up way big. If you're playing Commander, you can get up to 40 damage, that kind of stuff. And so this is a really exciting card if you have tons and tons of mana, which we've already seen cards play something like Torment of Hellfire, where you're trying to ramp up to absurd amounts of mana. If there's ways to create infinite mana, you can do really cool stuff. This is a fun card. It's a really cool one. I think red has a lot of other really good X spells. This technically is the cheapest to get to the highest damage output for being able to go at face, especially. There's things like Star of Extinction that deals 20 damage for 7 mana to all creatures. There's ways to force that damage to go towards face. This is just the best way to go towards a lot of different people's faces for the least amount of mana. So an exciting card. I think you guys can see where it can go. Anyway, exponential growth. We have a bunch of these different like X spells. I don't think we've seen all of them yet, so excited to see what else we get with these. This one, again, I don't think is actually that powerful, but oh boy, am I going to be playing this one. Exponential growth, XX, and 2 green, sorcery. Until end of turn, double target creature's power X times. So just double its power X times. So my favorite card, I've talked about it a lot, is Pummeler, Electrostatic Pummeler, where that's what it does. Every time you pay 3 energy, you get to double its power over and over and over again, and that way you can get up to massive amounts of damage. That's really fun and exciting, but you get to do it at instant speed. It's an activated ability, you get to do it at instant speed. Exponential growth, you only get to do it as a sorcery, which is still really, really powerful. I'm not going to dispute that this is really good, especially if you can give something that has hexproof or has trample or whatever, and get this up to, I'm trying to think of how much mana you would need. With Electrostatic Pummeler, you pump it up one time to where it gets up to a decent amount of power, and then you have to double its power 2 or 3 times. Well, so for 3 times, X would need to be 3, and so X3 would be 6, so 8 power, 8 mana to be able to double something 3 times. That's a little bit too expensive. At the same time, though, if you have like an Elder Gargoth out and then you have 6 mana, you can double Elder Gargoth's power twice, which gets it up to 12, gets it up to 24. So you can, on turn 6, Gargoth, play this and have lethal on turn 6 pretty easily with that. So it's a good card as far as like doubling power is a powerful thing to do. But is it actually something that will for sure win you games in standard? Not necessarily, but oh boy, is it going to be some fun stuff to do. I actually do think this can be a really powerful card in Commander, however, where if there is some type of effect where you just need to get something's power doubled and do some crazy shenanigans, sometimes you can just go off on your turn and do it all. And so fun stuff. I think it's fun. I think it's exciting. All right, moving on. Basic Conjuration, another good lesson card here for us. 3 mana, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of the library in random order, and gain 3 life. So this isn't an exciting card if it was just in your main deck. I would not play this. There's a bunch of like 1 mana cards that have done something similar to this in the past. Incubation, going on adventure. I can't remember the other card of it, but this being a lesson card in the sideboard, something you can bring in. I feel like if you have learn and lesson type of effects in a green deck in general. Being able to bring this to hand and just say, okay, well, if I ever am running out of cards, I can make sure I can go find a creature card and stay in the game, which is something that green, like stompy decks sometimes need to do. And so I think this is an okay lesson card. Again, I'm not really sure. The more and more I think about learn lesson, I'm less excited for it, but the more having a sideboard has historically been pretty good. And in general, I think that you only need to have one card that has a learn effect on it to make it worthwhile to have a full sideboard of lesson cards. And so if that's the case, there are some learn cards that have so far been pretty decent. And yeah, they might be a little bit more expensive to do what it does or whatever, but they still do enough stuff that you get the learn effect on it as well, that it's just like, okay, that's good. And there's some learn effects that are on like really cheap spells that it's like, okay, might as well run a four set of these. And then I get a sideboard of all this stuff. So these are at least worth considering throwing into a sideboard for whatever deck you're going to have those learn cards in. And so that's the main reason we're talking about them here. All right, Quandrix Cultivator, 4 mana, 3/4 Turtle Druid. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a forest or island card, put onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This is a super powerful card. It's a common card or uncommon card that's making up into the top ones because I think this will actually see quite a bit of play. First off, the stats are really relevant. 3/4 means that it can trade off with the Bonecrusher Giant. It can block a Seasoned Hollow Blade. It can, contend against the more aggro decks while still ramping up into other stuff. The colors here are very versatile, so if you're playing anything in the blue-green colors, it's still pretty easy to cast this. If you're playing Sultai or if you're playing Bant or whatever other colors that you could be playing, this is still a really powerful card. And so I'm a fan of the Quandrix Cultivator. Not quite Ugin level for sure, but Ugin came out on turn 3, and if you had a land in hand, you could play it out. This gets a stick on turn 4, and you get to go search your library for it instead of having to have it in your hand. There was sometimes that Ugin Uro didn't actually have the land in hand to do it with, and so Uro's gone. I think this can actually kind of fill that slot a little bit. Yeah, it's 4 mana instead of 3, but you also didn't actually get the body of Uro on turn 3. It doesn't gain you life, but it's a good defender. And so I think that this is a pretty dang good card, especially if you're ramping in general. So you're already getting up to this on turn 3, whatever, then it's a pretty good card. So I'm a big fan of this one. I think it's really good. I like it lots. All right, a Decisive Denial, 2 mana instant, choose one. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. And then you also have counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 3. So not quite a negate, but pretty good, pretty close to negate. Paying 3 is not easy to do. And then you also have a fight spell on that. I think this is just, it does all the things that are really, really powerful. This is, if you're playing like, there's the Simic Flash deck that's been in Historic for quite a while, and it's been really, really powerful. And this would take the slot of something in that deck. That's how powerful I think this is. That deck has been played a long time. It's been improved upon here and there, and it is really optimized. And I still think that this would probably come into a deck like that because they are playing out bigger things every once in a while. They're playing out wolves, or if you're going to be playing anything in the Simic colors, it's probably going to be something a little bit stompy that wants the ability to remove stuff, but also you are playing Simic a lot of times to be able to have counter spells as well. I think this just becomes a full play set in that, where it's I would say not quite the level of Drawn to the Lock. And that's one of the biggest issues. Okay, it's not quite as powerful as Drawn to the Lock, but it's the same versatility of like, okay, Drawn to the Lock only works in certain decks when you're going to be milling cards and doing that kind of stuff. And once you do it, it's really, really powerful. This is the same type of thing where I can counter the things that I need to counter. I can stop board wipes. I can stop them from playing, a Planeswalker, an Ultimatum, whatever is really important right now. But also I can still have the ability to fight against the creature decks that are going to show up. And so I think this becomes a full play set in a Simic Stomping deck that I think is actually going to get pretty scary. Really good stuff here. All right, Vanishing Verse, 2 mana instant, exile target monocolored permanent. And there are a lot of monocolored permanents out there right now. There's honestly not that many multicolored permanents that are being played that much, especially because the mana base is really bad for multicolored stuff at the moment. There is still stuff out there, but you can be running other removal as well, and so it's fine. This is any permanent as well. So Embercleave dies to this. Great Henge dies to this. This just exiles it, and it's any monocolored permanent. lands do not count for this because they are no colored, and so it does have to have a color to be monocolored, I believe. And so really awesome stuff. This is actually probably one of the best removal spells I've seen in a really long time. I'm not sure how good it becomes in Commander, because a lot of commanders are going to be multicolored, and those are sometimes some of the best targets to be getting with removal. At the same time, there's a lot of other just good spells out there that you can kill that are going to be monocolored cards. And so this is one of the best removal spells I've seen in a long time, especially because it just exiles and there's not really a downside besides it. And so, and it's any permanent. So yeah, very powerful card. This is fantastic. All right. Silver Quill Silencer, 2 mana, 3/2. As it enters the battlefield, you choose a non-land card name, and then whenever an opponent casts a spell with the chosen name, that player loses 3 life, and you draw a card. So this kind of requires you to know what's in people's hand. You want to be able to play like Thoughtseize on turn 1, or some sort of discard spell, Duress, peek at the opponent's hand, discard something, and then you know that they're going to have 2 of this spell or something that they are for sure going to be casting. Throw this out there and say, okay, if you want to cast that, you're going to take 3 points of damage, and I'm going to draw a card for you casting that spell. That's where I think the Silver Quill becomes good. I don't think that you cast this is as powerful as like Meddling Mage, where you play it out and you can stop them from actually casting certain spells. It's not as powerful as other stuff out there, but that sequencing of, okay, I saw your hand, I know the spell that's going to be the best card to cast. Well, if you're going to cast it, you're going to have to pay 3 life to do it and give me a card to do it. And a lot of times in the early game, that's so much advantage, especially if you get multiple of these out there and really get to see their hand and see what they're going to be playing, and try to get enough value out of it to make it work. This doesn't stop a board wipe though necessarily. It doesn't do a lot of other things there, but I think that if you're going to be playing some sort of Orzhov control, this does become a really good piece in that deck. But at the same time though, if you're top decking this as really in the late game, you don't know what's in their hand anymore. They've already played a bunch of different spells. I'm not sure how powerful it becomes then. At the same time though, you can know which cards are going to be the best for them to be hitting, and maybe you can be doing enough damage throughout the game that this does just kind of shut them down. So interesting card. Symmetry Sage, 1 mana, 0/2 flying with Magecraft, and says whenever you cast or copy an instant sorcery spell, target creature you control has base power 2 until end of turn. So this is a 1 mana 2/2 as long as we cast a spell on turn 2. It's 1 mana 2/2 with flying. Really powerful. Man, if only there was a deck that was wanting to cast a bunch of spells with a bunch of really powerful 1-drops, like the Magecraft deck that we've been talking about a lot with mono white. One of the biggest issues with mono white is there's not a bunch of good cantrip spells or instants and sorceries to be playing in just mono white itself. And so maybe this is the card that lets us say, okay, let's go ahead and go into Azorius so we can add an opt, so we can add in, whatever other instant sorcery spells that would be working well with Magecraft. There's lots of extra copy spells. You can also then have like spell pierce type effects or anything like that if you're in historic that become way powerful, that you can stop the board wipes from coming, everything like that. And so I think Symmetry Sage actually becomes really powerful. You're already going to be playing the clever Lumimancer, which also needs to get the power 2 or higher as well. So there's a bunch of, if you're playing any creatures that have base power 1 or 0, this also gives them 2 power every time you cast an instant or sorcery. So this doesn't just help itself become a 1 mana 2/2. It helps Magecraft become a 1 mana 4/4 with 1 spell. That's really good. It's pretty dang great stuff. So it's actually a 1 mana 4/5. My bad. It's good stuff. Anyway, 4/3. There you go. Show of Confidence, 2 mana instant. Whenever you cast this spell, copy it for each other instant or sorcery spell you've cast this turn. You may choose new targets for the copies. Put a +1/+1 encounter on target creature. It gains vigilance until end of turn. Well, let's just talk about the deck we were just talking about. What does this card want? It wants other spells to cast or copy. And guess what? Okay, we play out a couple of these 1-drops on turn 1, turn 2. Hopefully we have 3 of them. That would be the best thing. And then on turn 3, we have 3 1-drops that are, waiting to get pumped by us casting spells. And then you cast, an Opt or a Defiant Strike, and then you cast Show of Confidence, which will copy itself. So then it triggers. So for 2 mana, you're actually triggering 2 times. And then the late game, if you end up having lots of spells, or on turn 4, you can cast 2 spells for one cost, and then cast this, and it'll copy 2 additional times. And that will give you 5 triggers of Magecraft on turn 4. This is really, really powerful. And not only that, but it also is putting counters onto creatures and giving them vigilance. And so this is, I think, a really, really exciting card. It definitely isn't super powerful just by itself. If you're just going to cast this by itself, not super exciting. It does require to have the most busted of hands to make this really, really powerful. But I do think that that deck is getting terrifying, extremely terrifying. And this is going to be a part of the reason that's there. I'm not sure if this becomes a full play set because of how powerful it is, or if because it needs to have other spells to work with it, that you run like 2 of these and you just hope to run into it in the times, and it's like part of the combo that can happen and be the explosive play. I'm not sure. I am really excited to try out that deck though, and I think it's going to be powerful enough. And the fact that we can now go into Azorius, white blue pretty easily means that you have the ability to counter spells and protect your stuff a lot better and easier, draw through cards a lot better and easier. And so I'm really excited for this. Really, really excited for this card, this set, that deck. All right, this one just barely came in, so sorry for the poor quality. I get everything off of MTG Goldfish, just so you guys know. I'm not trying to like steal stuff off their stuff. I really appreciate the way that they set up their site. They do a really good job with it. Go check out their stuff, mtgpreviews.com. Whenever new stuff comes in, it's always a little bit less quality. And also I appreciate them doing all the translations as well. I've tried Scryfall in the past, tried a bunch of others. Scryfall doesn't translate the names correctly. All the times they make jokes when they're doing that kind of stuff. And so I don't do it. Anyway, this is an interesting card. Let's dive into this one. Selfless Glyph Weaver. 2 mana, 2/3, exile it, and creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. So kind of like what is it? Not Linvala card that we've seen already lately. That the angel that it can sacrifice itself to either give indestructible or hexproof to all of your creatures. This is a good effect. Having it not on a legendary body means you can have multiple of these on the battlefield to work well. The fact that it's a cleric is actually really relevant and awesome. So I do think this actually can see some play, maybe the 2 of, especially because on the other side you have a board wipe. So 8 mana board wipe though. Sorcery, choose a creature or planeswalker, then destroy all other creatures and planeswalkers. So you get to choose something that you get to board wipe and swing in. I don't think this is a constructed card. I don't think this is standard or historic playable. Not that you wouldn't play this. The Selfless Glyph Weaver is good enough, and we've seen with like with Valky and a couple other ones that having a really cheap side of a modal card, a modal cards are really nice when you have a cheap side of it and then a really expensive side of it, so you can be relevant in 2 sides of the game, the early game and the late game. Selfless Glyph Weaver though is not quite the same relevance as Valky is. I don't think, like having the chance to discard and potentially turn it into whatever card it is, giving your stuff indestructible on turn 3 so that then you can dodge the board wipe on turn 4, turn 5 is really good. It's kind of funky how like there's a board wipe side of this and also a side that's countering board wipes, which maybe that is what you're trying to do, is play this out and then you can Deadly Vanity and protect all of your stuff so that you don't have to choose anything. All your stuff just survives. So I don't know. I think that an 8 mana board wipe is still a little bit too expensive. And I think Selfless Glyph Weaver itself, while being a cleric and being good, the 3-drop slot is really, really contended right now. And so I'm not sure this actually becomes really playable, because I'd just rather run Righteous Valkyries. I'd rather run Skyclave Apparition. I'd rather run a million cards in white and black that are better for interaction than this. Maybe a 2 of, I don't know. Anyway, Test of Talent, 2 mana instant, counter target instant or sorcery spell, search its controller's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name as that spell and exile them. That player shuffles, then draws a card for each card exiled from their hand this way. So someone's casting an ultimatum, you counter it. As long as this resolves, they no longer have ultimatums in their deck. Someone is casting, any instant or sorcery spell that's busted and crazy. Maybe someone's casting like reanimate cards, counter it. They can no longer find any more reanimate spells in their deck. That option's gone for them. This is a really busted card. It's really, really powerful. It only hits instant and sorceries. That means that planeswalkers don't get hit, enchantments don't get hit, all the non-creature stuff, any creatures don't get hit. And so I think this might be more of a sideboard card than it is a main deck card. At the same time though, Ultimatum is cast often enough right now that it's good. You also can counter. I'm interested to see how this works with Bone Crusher Giant. So you counter Stomp. I'm not sure if this will then let you go grab all of the Bone Crusher Giants out of their deck or not. I believe that it would, because the number of cards with the same name as that spell and exile them. The spell itself, the spell side of the adventure cards is Stomp, and I'm not sure if you can go and look for Stomp or go look for Bone. You have to go look for Bone Crusher with it. So I'm not sure how that works with that side of things. We might have to test things out at some point, but this is really powerful for standard still, just with being able to counter ultimatums. I think this is a great way to deal with that. I think the fact that even just ultimatum decks themselves are going to probably be running these just to contend with themselves will reduce their ability to be a relevant deck, that there might be other decks that come into contention. How about that? So I think that it'll just shake up the format a little bit. So I like the card for that reason. Killian, Ink Duelist, 2 mana, 2/2, lifelink menace. Spells you cast that target a creature cost 2 less to cast. So if we are targeting a creature, so Vraska's Contempt is a 4 mana exile target creature or planeswalker. As long as we're targeting at a creature, it only costs 2 black mana to cast instead of 4 mana. That's really powerful, especially if you start looking at some of the other cards that were like 5 mana or more expensive that might actually be worth playing. I don't think you play it for that reason, to cast the really expensive ones, but I think you can work it out. I can't remember with Blood Chief's Thirst if this reduces the cost on kicker costs as well. It might. I can't remember if that's an additional cost that goes off afterwards, but if you can kick a Blood Chief's Thirst for 2 mana instead of kicking it for 4 mana altogether, that's really busted as well, as long as it's targeting a creature. Heartless Act only costing 1 mana, just a bunch of other spells. So this, I think, is really powerful. A really, really good card. The biggest issue is that this also dies pretty easily. At the same time, though, lifelink and menace are still pretty relevant effects, where if you are trying to play a little bit of like a tempo-y, control type of deck, that you get out some humans, some warlocks, and humans also get some really good removal spells with the one that like exile target creature, take damage equal to its power unless you control a human. Or mana value unless you control human. Anyway, all those kinds of cards become really powerful where you can kind of play a little bit of like a human tempo type deck. There's Kitesail Freebooter. I think this just kind of adds into that deck to be able to work a little bit better. And so not sure if that would actually be an actual contending deck, but I thought this was definitely worth talking about. It's an interesting card. Mascot Expedition, 7 mana sorcery lesson. You get all of the mascots except for Pest. Pest got hosed, and Fractals got hosed as well. But anyway, you get a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token of flying. You get a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token, and you get a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token of flying. If you're playing Learn Lesson, this at least goes in as a 2 of into any sideboard. It's just really good. It resets the board. You get a flying blocker, which can be really relevant in some matchups. You get how much power on the board? 5 plus 4. So I can math. 5 plus 4 is 9. There you nailed it for 7 power. So for 7 mana, not like the most specific card, but it's also coming out of your sideboard for free with lesson or learn lesson type thing. So, and only that, this is another spell that you can throw into a graveyard and cast for free with the reanimate spell type cards. And so I think it's fun. All right, let's dive into some of the other noteworthy cards, the things that are at least worth talking about, even though they may not quite be playable. Like White got card draw. And it sucks so bad. Who is surprised? Not me. Secret Rendezvous. 3 mana sorcery. You and target opponent each draw 3 cards. Wizards. Why? Why do you keep not making white card draw good? Like it's awful. It's a terrible card. So the issue here is, yeah, even though you might be able to draw 3 cards, and in Commander you might be able to like make a really good friend by having them draw 3 cards, or maybe you have Narset on the battlefield and stop them from drawing cards. But that's not the reason why white needs card draws, to not be able to play blue. White needs card draws so that you can actually play white. That you can actually play mono white decks and they can be contenders in Commander. And that's the reason why they said that they're going to start giving white better card draw. And maybe it's still coming. I'm not, but this is just, it's a little bit frustrating that this is not good. You don't want to improve your opponent's hand, especially if it costs you 3 mana and a card to be able to let them be ahead of you now, and so that's what this card does. It's awful. But at least they give us good removal in white. So 3 mana instant exile target tap creature. This is a common card. It actually isn't the worst. There's Seal Away that played quite a bit. Whenever a tapped creature, you could flash it in and exile target tapped creature. But then Silhouette could also get removed and they can have that creature back. Expel for 1 extra mana just does the same thing, but they are just gone. And white has needed more of these things where it's just like, it just gets exiled. It's gone. It's done. Just give that to us for 2 mana at some point. And you can do like all the things you do with black. It's things that are monocolored, things that are, things without plus encounters, whatever, like all the things that black always gets for destroy stuff. Give white the exile effects for 2 mana. Like you've been talking about how Wizards have been talking about how they want to give better removal for white. And this, while that's the case for everything else, in Commander, 3 mana is a little bit easier to cast. At the same time, though, getting the thing that you want to remove be tapped is way harder to do, especially when things are protected. And typically when it's attacking and tapping down, it has lightning greaves on it or whatever else. And so I just think this is not quite there. Anyway, we keep talking about the bad removal spells for white. This was just an interesting one I wanted to at least bring up. So this spell costs 2 less to cast during your end step. Why would you want to cast during your end step? If it was the opponent's end step, this would be really actually a pretty powerful card. And then you get to destroy target creature or planeswalker you don't control, put a +1/+1 counter on target and onto 1 target creature you control. If you have an instant spell, you want to be casting on their end step. And so I think that should give you like almost a benefit for getting to the point where it's the best time to cast it. Like you did it, you got to that point before having to cast this or whatever, and then you can get it for cheaper cost to destroy something. Instead, it's like, oh, well, if you get a cast at the worst possible moment in your time, then you get this for cheaper. I'm not a fan of that. All right. Anyway, we'll get into some actual rare cards and other stuff now that we've talked about those ones. Devastating Mastery. I'm not a huge fan of this one. It's another 6 mana, destroy all non-land permanents card. Undo Inversion gives you a land, but you do it for 8 mana. You can also pay 4 instead of 8 for this. And if you paid 4, an opponent chooses up to 2 non-land permanents they control and returns them to their owner's hands. So you get to choose the opponent, I believe, because it says an opponent. It doesn't actually say choose which opponent that is. I'm not sure if it just goes immediately to the person to the left, if there's like rules on that. But in general, you can use this as a political thing in Commander. In Standard, I don't like it. It's just you do get to destroy all non-land permanents, which means you get planeswalkers gone, get everything that. If you're playing like Jeskai spells where you're not going to be having permanents on the battlefield, you're casting all spells in general, then maybe this is something that's a little bit better in that case, especially if you are going to be reanimating spells from the graveyard. You can cast this for free and destroy all the things. That's where I feel like this deck might come into play, but other than that, I'm not as big a fan of it. This card is actually pretty cool though. Double Major, 2 mana instant, copy target creature spell you control, except it isn't a legendary if the spell is legendary. So you have to, if you're casting a Questing Beast on turn 6 and you have 2 extra mana, you can copy it and you get 2 Questing Beasts and go hit in. Does that make this card worth actually playing in the decks that would want to do that kind of thing? I don't think so. But is it super fun and awesome? Yes. So I think this is a really fun card, a really cool card. It probably should have been talked about earlier on. I just kind of missed it. And so actually it's down here for that reason. But this card is actually a really super fun card. I do think it can be really powerful. Anytime you can copy legendaries and have them not be legendaries, it feels like there's shenanigans that should be able to happen there. But at the same time, I think there's also not quite enough to do for Standard or Historic right now. I could be wrong. This might be something that will end up being really busted and I don't know about it. Especially like copying Kinnons actually could be really... actually, copying Kinnon. Ooh. That could be pretty busted stuff. All right, there might be some interesting things we can do with that. All right, Necrotic Fumes, 3 mana, sorcery lesson as an additional cost to cast this spell. Exile a creature you control. So exile a creature you control, and then exile target creature or planeswalker. Good removal in the sideboard. It does just take care of creature or planeswalker as long as you're playing a deck that's going to have creatures, which most of the lesson or learn lesson type things come from a creature that you're playing out. And so this actually I think works out pretty well. Like if you need something to remove, this just does it. And so this actually might be one of the better removal spells for lessons that I've seen. I actually, the more and more I think about this actually is a pretty good card. But it's also a completely dead card if you don't have a creature to exile to begin with. So that's where it becomes a little bit harder to play. Dramatic Finale. 4 mana enchantment, creatures you control get +1/+1, and whenever one or more non-token creatures you control die, create a 2/1 white and black creature, inkling creature token with flying. But this ability only triggers once each turn. So you do get a 3/2 because the creatures, it's going to be on the battlefield. This gives you +1/+1 for all tokens you control. If this gave +1/+1 to all creatures and not just tokens, then I think this would actually be a little bit better. But it's like, okay, you're trying to play a tokens deck with this. It only gives +1/+1 for all tokens. I feel like this is, it keeps hurting itself more and more every extra word that it says on this. And so it almost did its thing. It was kind of cool for a second. I don't know, maybe there's a tokens deck, but the biggest issue is that if you're playing a tokens deck, you're also not getting the value of this whenever stuff dies. Non-token creatures, they die. There is Clarion Spirit. There are other creatures out there that make a bunch of other tokens. That's where I think this deck could probably end up being decent, and we're going to play it on the channel for sure, but I'm just not sure if I actually like the card that much. Dream Strix, 3 mana, 3/2 flyer. Whenever it becomes the target of a spell, you sacrifice it, and then whenever it dies, you learn. I think that if this like ETB'd and learn right away, this would be a little bit better card. I think some people have been pretty hyped about this and saying it's pretty decent. I'm not as big a fan of the card personally. A 3 mana, 3/2 flyer that doesn't bounce cards like a Brazen Bar, that doesn't, do a bunch of other crazy stuff, is just not as good in my opinion. Like there's so many other better 3-drops in the format, even with flying and ever that. Yeah, if it does sacrifice, it can be kind of good. I don't know. I'm not as big a fan of this card. I don't think it's the worst of all cards, but it's not something I'm going to be playing very often. Charge Through, 1 mana instant. Target creature gains trample until a turn, and you draw a card. Green doesn't have a ton of cantrips, especially ones that are really relevant to what it's trying to do. You have to have a creature to target, but just like with some of the other mono red cantrips that we've seen in the past where like they have to target a creature, you can target the opponent's side of the board just to keep drawing through cards and find the things you need to do. There have been some green Magecraft type things that have come out, green things that want to have like storm effects that are out there as well. Maybe having cantrip in green is interesting enough, and the fact that it gives trample to creatures is actually pretty decent. And so I'm in between this card. I just wanted to kind of show this one off more than some of the other common cards because it actually is decent. Mercurial Transformation, 2 mana, sorcery. That's a lesson. Until end of turn, target creature non-land permanent loses all abilities and becomes your choice of a blue frog creature with base power and toughness 1/1, or a blue octopus creature with base power 4 and toughness 4/4. This is interesting enough just because it's a rather versatile card. You can either make one of your creatures become a 4/4 and hit in for more damage with base power and toughness, which if it has plus counters on it, like a fractal or something like that, that can actually be a pretty big hit. You can also turn an Embercleave into a 1/1 frog real quick. It's any non-land permanent, loses all abilities and becomes a 1/1 frog, which you can then kill. And so I actually think that's a little bit of an interesting one. I actually think there's the creature that gives -1/-1 to all creatures that are out there. Playing that with this and just turning anything that the opponent plays into a 1/1 frog that immediately dies is kind of funny. It's the same type of feeling of like Oko being able to turn anything into an elk. Oh, you have a thing. Oh no, it's an elk now. Well, this can also turn anything into a frog, but that it's only worthwhile if you can actually kill it on the turn that you turn it into a frog. So funny, interesting. I'm not sure what I think about this card. The fact that it's in the sideboard though is really good. This is probably the first lesson card that I'd actually would be considering playing in the main board. So that just goes to show how powerful this is. But I do think you have to set the situations right. Last of the noteworthy cards before we dive into just the rest of the bulk stuff here. Pilgrim of the Ages. I thought it was interesting enough. 3 mana, 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic Plains card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. And then you can pay 6 to return it from your graveyard to hand. So Birth of Meletis for 2 mana goes and grabs you a Plains, which part of the reason that works so well is that it's at 2 mana. I understand that. This being at 3 mana is quite a bit worse than that, but at the same time though, control decks are wanting to be able to make sure they're hitting their land drops and everything like that. This is interesting enough just because in the late game, you can be holding up counter spells, holding up card draw, whatever you need to do. Or you can also just pay 6 at the instant speed to bring this from graveyard back to hand to make sure that you keep hitting land drops, keep thinning your deck out of lands, that kind of stuff. And so I thought this was an interesting enough one where I'm not sure, I think it's worse than Birth of Meletis, but it's around the same level. And Birth of Meletis has seen so much play that I was like, oh, you know what, this actually could contend with that. I'm not sure where it's at with that one. Let me know in the comments below if you think this is actually contending with Birth of Meletis and that. All right, into the rest of the cards here. We got some pretty good common cards. There's some interesting ones like on the bottom left here, Fuming Effigy, 4 mana. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Well, Sir Conrad needs friends. So anytime cards leaving the graveyard, getting more damage to deal is kind of a fun thing to do. It's only 1 or more though, where Sir Conrad is, if all of them leave the battlefield at once, it deals a bunch of damage. And so that's where I feel like that's way more interesting and fun. Fuming Effigy, well, whatever. Anyway, there's a few other cards in here. We'll just kind of go through these really quick. Top left, Owling's Shield Mage, 3 in white and black for a 3/3 flyer. We're seeing Ward becomes an official like eternal keyword is what they're saying with it before. And this is what I was trying to hope for, is that Ward would become something more than just Ward pay 2, because we'd only seen Ward pay 2, Ward 2 colorless mana so far. This goes to show that Ward can come up as different things. So it has hexproof unless someone's willing to pay 3 life, is what that's saying, to target it for a spell or whatever. That's pretty cool. I'm excited to see what else they do with that kind of stuff. All right, that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, all that stuff. And I'm excited for Strixhaven. What about you guys? On a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you for Strixhaven? I am pretty flippin' stoked, not gonna lie. So yeah, we're gonna get through the rest of these spoilers, and we're gonna be diving into stuff on April 15th. We're only 14 days away. I actually will probably get I haven't gotten any notifications yet, but they typically have a early access event the day beforehand, and I will be doing lots of content on that day as well. So anyway, look forward to it, guys. Hit the like button, subscribe. I'll see you guys next one. Bye.